The interesting thing is going to be going forward, based upon that bipartisan infrastructure bill vote, if somehow the Democrats manage to get the reconciliation bill passed. I mean, you know, it's really going to come down to Joe Manchin and whether Joe Biden is willing to like begin investigations of his daughter. But we'll see. But if they get that reconciliation bill passed, it's going to be interesting to see how many of those 13 Republicans who voted for the bipartisan bill retire. There's already like 2 or 3, right?
Three. 13.
3 out of the 13 have already announced that they were retiring. That's why they took that vote. This could be number 4, Fred Upton from Michigan. And Fred Upton is this sort of like an odious Republican that Joe Biden, I believe, campaigned for. And so he gets this bipartisan vote. I mean, who cares? He's not going to vote for the Build Back Better, I don't think. That's just the way conservatives and Republicans wouldn't like the Build Back Better bill. We'll get to that in a second. Here is Fred Upton on State of the Union on CNN. We'll see if he's going to retire or not.
I don't think the votes are there yet. A good number of Democrats demanded and are going to receive a CBO report as to whether is it really paid for. What does it do when you expand Medicare? What does that do to the solvency? And, you know, Joe Manchin asked the question about inflation. What is this going to do to inflation? I can remember talking with Larry Summers a few months ago. He was very worried about the spending by the Congress and what it in fact was going to do to inflation. So I don't think we're going to get these answers to necessarily get for Pelosi to get the votes before the end of the week. And we also know that this bill is going to be widely different from what the Senate ultimately may do. Not a lot of days in the legislative calendar yet.
All right, so here's Fred Upton just basically saying what, has been announced. We don't know what the CBO score is. And of course, what's bizarre is if he's so worried about this deficit spending and about inflation, how could he have just passed the bill that we just passed?
Well, but this kind of spending is going to be the one that causes inflation, not the spending that I like.
Good thing Joe Biden was out there campaigning for this guy, more or less against the Democrat.
Oh, well, he's a part of the healthy Republican Party that
there it is. There's the Republican Party we need to be healthy and strong. About to run like with his tail between his legs because he took one vote on on basically an expanded highway bill.
So inflation being the new deficit hawkery, I don't know how long that lasts, but it probably lasts long enough for it to be convenient for Manchin and
without a doubt. All he needs is for 2 more months.
Yeah, it's so dumb, and it's aided by the media clutching its pearls. Hate to use that phrase about inflation too, because they have inflated the sense of doom coming from this temporary inflation period.
I mean, the bottom line is, to the extent that inflation is really hurting people, it is exactly the same people that all the people worried about inflation are willing to deny earned child tax, a child tax credit and extended unemployment benefits. Those two things right there, to the extent that there are people, and the eviction moratorium and student loan payments. If you're worried about how people are dealing with inflation, you deal with those 4 things and there is no problem.
But like, this is like when Henry Kissinger says democracy is another country. The only inflation they're worried about is wage inflation.
Yeah,
exactly.
And they are worried about, banks in particular are worried about the value of debt decreasing due to inflation. I mean, that's part of it as well. There's been something like over $800 billion returned because of inflation to debtors from creditors. It's like, maybe it's temporary for right now, but that worries them as well. And I'm sure, I don't know Upton's campaign contributions, but that wouldn't shock me if that's at the top of the list of his concerns.